It was a quiet, chilly evening in a small, dimly lit living room. The fire crackled gently in the hearth, its warm glow flickering across the old weathered furniture. Grandma Brenda sat in her rocking chair, her frail hands steady as she held a cigarette between her fingers. William, a young interviewer, sat across from her, adjusting his recorder before beginning the conversation. He was here to uncover the terrifying events that Brenda had survived twice in her lifetime.
Grandma Brenda, you mentioned something happened to you in 1984, something that still haunts you to this day. Can you tell me what happened?
1984. It was a strange year, William. I was living alone in a cabin deep in the woods, far from the noise of the town. I liked the solitude, thought I was safer there. There was a couple living down the road from me, Paul and Jenny. Sweet kids, newlyweds. We didn't talk much, but I'd see them on their porch sometimes, laughing, enjoying life. But one night, everything changed. It was late, past midnight. I was sitting by the fire when I heard it. Their screams. At first I thought it was a wild animal, but then I heard something else. Heavy footsteps, real slow, deliberate.
Grandma Brenda's eyes glinted in the low light, her voice hoarse yet steady.
I grabbed my shotgun and ran out the door. The wind was howling, but I could still hear those footsteps. I hurried down the path to their house, and that's when I saw it. Blood splattered on their porch. Jenny was laying there, eyes wide open, but she was gone. Paul. He was still alive. Barely. He looked up at me, tried to say something, but all that came out was a gurgle. His throat was slashed wide open.
What did you do?
William leaned forward, captivated. Brenda's voice dropped, the firelight casting eerie shadows across her face.
I tried to pull him up, but it was no use. He was already slipping away. And then I saw him.
Brenda's eyes flickered with a haunted look.
There he was, standing in the doorway. Tall, his face hidden in the shadows. But I knew it was him. I could feel it in my bones. He didn't say a word, just stood there staring at me, like he was enjoying the fear. His figure was just like it had been in '67. Time hadn't touched him, William, not a damn wrinkle. That same smile, like he enjoyed every bit of terror he caused.
Her voice trembled, but her grip on the cigarette remained steady. The fire crackled loudly as though the room itself felt the tension rising. William felt a chill run down his spine as Brenda continued.
I didn't wait. I fired right at his chest, and he staggered back, and I thought I was done with him. But then he just smiled, like it didn't hurt him at all.
For a moment, there was silence. William waited, his heart pounding as Brenda took a slow drag from her cigarette.
I didn't wait around. I ran back to my cabin, locked the door, and waited. But it didn't take long. The footsteps, they came back, closer. And then the knock. Soft at first, then louder. He was toying with me. I called the sheriff, but they were out in town, wouldn't get there for hours. I was alone, just me in the dark. Then I heard it. Glass shattering. He was inside.
William's breath hitched, his eyes wide with anticipation.
I grabbed my knife and hid in the closet. I didn't trust the shotgun anymore. I could hear him moving through the house, real slow, like he was hunting me. My heart was pounding, but I stayed quiet. So quiet. Then the footsteps stopped. He was right outside the closet.
William leaned in closer, the tension unbearable. The fire's crackling seemed deafening now.
I ran, same as I did back in '67. But this time I was slower, older. I could hear him behind me, following, just like before. But this time, he wasn't playing around. He caught me again, tossed me down like I was nothing. I thought it was the end, but this time I fought back. I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. I pulled a knife I kept on me, and I got him in the leg. He wasn't expecting that.
The room was still, the fire casting long shadows as Brenda spoke in a whisper.
He roared like a beast and grabbed me, throwing me across the room. I hit the wall hard, but I didn't stop. I scrambled up, blood pouring from my head, and ran for the door. I could hear him behind me, his breath ragged, the footsteps faster now. He wasn't playing with me anymore.
The air in the room seemed to thicken, and William felt his pulse quicken as Grandma Brenda's tale neared its climax.
I stumbled out the front door, my vision blurry and body aching, every breath a struggle. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything over the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. But then, there they were, headlights. Bright, blinding lights cut through the darkness like salvation itself. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, thinking it was over, thinking I was saved. The sheriff's car screeched to a stop and 2 deputies jumped out, guns drawn, shouting for me to get down and asking where the bastard was. But it was too late. I looked back toward the house, and he was gone. Vanished. Not a trace, not a sound. Just the wind rustling through the trees, like he melted into the night. The woods swallowed him whole like they were protecting him. Tried to tell them, tried to scream that he was right there, that he was just inside. But they didn't understand. They couldn't. He wasn't a man anymore. He was something else. Something dark. Something you can't just shoot down with a gun.
The silence was suffocating. William stared at Brenda, unable to speak for a moment.
And did they ever find him?
They never did. They searched the woods for days, found nothing, but I know he's still out there, watching and waiting.
Grandma Brenda's voice trailed off, her gaze shifting to the window as though expecting something, to be watching from the darkness beyond.
That wasn't the end of it, though. He came back for me. Not right away, but I knew he would. I could feel it in my bones.
She took another slow drag from her cigarette, the embers glowing faintly in the dim light.
That's why I moved, got away from the woods and thought I could start fresh. But no matter where I went, those footsteps, they followed me. I still hear them, every night.
William's eyes darted to the window as the fireplace flickered out, leaving only the faint glow of the embers and the shadows dancing along the walls.
Do you think he'll come back?
Brenda didn't respond immediately. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing as they focused on something outside the window.
He never left, William.
William froze, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. He swallowed hard, the room suddenly feeling colder. Brenda leaned forward, her eyes dark and unblinking, her voice dropping to a whisper.
He's here, for you.
William's breath caught in his throat. Slowly, almost against his will, he turned to look behind him. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch, darkening, as if something was lurking just beyond the firelight. And then, a scream. Piercing. William's scream.
I fed you. Now let me rest in peace.
Grandma Brenda had told her story, and now, she was free. But someone, still lingered. The shadows in the room thickened, stretching across the floor, almost as if they were alive. Whatever had stalked her for decades had claimed another soul, just like before. The cabin, once filled with the warmth of firelight, was now swallowed by darkness. Outside, the woods stood silent, but deep within, something moved, waiting, watching. A dark figure, patient, hungry, always needing more. But there's one thing Brenda didn't tell William. She made a deal. The one who had haunted her all these years would not let her rest until a new soul was fed to him. Anyone who listens to her story, anyone who hears these words, becomes the next target. The only thing that can protect you now is to like and subscribe to this channel, because if you don't, you could be next. Sleep well, dear listener, if you can.